All right, I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order for a special called meeting for today, October 29th. I know Mr. Clemmer is either calling in or getting on the computer. He had some internet issues, so he will join us. We have two items on the agenda today. First, an executive session, and then a council discussion on a proposed reinvestment incentive program. For those who are watching on live stream, we will exit. The live stream will end in a couple minutes when we go into executive session, and then we will have a second live video start once we come out of executive session. So for those watching at home, that's how that will work. So this first one will be quick. It won't be that long for you to watch. Is there a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of discussion of negotiations and incident to propose contractual arrangement and proposed sale or purchase of property related to Project Smoke? Upon returning to open session, council may act on items discussed during executive session. Is there a motion?
So move.
Thank you, Mr. Cunningham. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Thomason. All those in favor of going to executive session, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. We will now end the live video and the recording. And for those watching at home, we'll record and put it on Facebook Live. All right, I believe we're good. Correct, Sean?
There's still an issue with Councilmember Clemmer. I believe he can listen. We cannot hear him.
Okay.
I'm not sure how to fix it.
Sean, did he, you got that mute button in your screen that's hidden. Has he found that?
I just clicked on ask to unmute and I clicked that.
But on Phil's screen, as he looked down at the lower, in my screen on the lower left, there's the mute button. And you got
Mr. Clemmer's on his, I think Mr. Clemmer's on his phone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Clemmer is listening. If he's got, if you got any concerns, Phil, I guess let us know the other ways. And I do know that this next piece, there's no, once we get to it, there's no vote planned or anything. It's just questions and discussion. But we now in a regular session. There were no votes taken in executive session, for the record. Now at this time, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the action discussed in executive session. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Mahoney. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Blackstone. Any discussion? Hearing none. We will do a roll call vote. I guess, Sean, if you want to do that. Or I'll do it. Mr. Mahoney?
Aye.
Mr. Thomason?
Aye.
Miss Derryberry?
Aye.
Unfortunately, we can't hear Mr. Clemmer. Mr. Cunningham?
Aye.
Mr. Blackstone?
Aye.
Mayor McLear? Aye. The vote passes 6-0.
Mayor, for
Yes,
the
sir.
record, I don't know how this is in regards to FOIA, but Councilmember Clemmer texted me that he votes aye.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we have to be able to hear him, so it's good to know, but we have to be able to hear him.
Understand.
All right, so that motion passes unanimously, I guess. And so I guess we're on to the next item, which is discussion of proposed reinvestment incentive program. Mr. Bell, if it's okay, I'm going to kind of give a little bit of a framework, and then if you want to kind of just give the quick highlights for it. If you guys remember, on first reading, we approved the Economic Development Incentive Ordinance, which grants certain incentives to investment in the community of $1 million or more that creates jobs. It's based on job count, based on the investment amount, and every agreement would be approved by council. But it was a way to give us some sort of guidelines and guide rails around incentives for investment into private investment into our community. It passed first reading. At that time, I mentioned that I would like to explore some way, whether it be in that ordinance or in subsequent programs or ordinances or policies, some way to acknowledge small businesses that want to reinvest in our community through expansion or upgrades. I felt my feeling is that I like the economic development incentive, the larger one. I think it leaves out the little guy. It leaves out our mom and pop stores that when they want to expand or upgrade their businesses, that they don't have any way to reap those same types of benefits. There are existing programs in other communities. I guess the main one is Anderson, is one that we leaned on a lot, as well as existing programs that county and even the city has already done before, like facade improvement grants. I worked with staff. We were able to identify an existing source in our budget of existing line item in our budget that was targeted for economic development, and kind of using that to create some sort of program where we could offer that type of help. And I think staff has researched something that the city of Anderson does. And Sean, I guess, do you want to take it from there?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. When Mayor McClear had asked me about developing a program for our existing small businesses, I reached out to several communities throughout the state, a lot of my city manager colleagues, and really beyond facade improvement grants, there aren't a whole lot of communities doing anything in this realm. However, my good friend David McEwen, city manager in Anderson, they told me that they developed a program a few years back that has been extremely successful in giving grants to their existing businesses throughout town, and it's based on several different grant programs. There's businesses can apply for facade improvements, signage, design assistance, interior upfit and maintenance, as well as infrastructure. And they have set some different caps on those. And what the city of Anderson has done is set aside $100,000 of their general fund each year for this program, with $25,000 available in each quarter. So businesses have the opportunity to apply each quarter, and it is on a competitive basis. Every quarter that this has been in existence for the city of Anderson, they've had more applicants than they've had money available. And so, but I thought that their program was what Mayor McClear had in mind. And so I received that and have sent it to Mr. Holmes to review and send it all to you guys for review. And we're just kind of at that point to kind of gauge interest in following something similar or doing something completely different, or just kind of gauging what everybody's temperature is on it.
Thanks, Mr. Bell. Before we get started, the only piece I'd say why something like this would be important is from time to time we have businesses who are looking to do these types of expansions, and whether it's I guess the best example might be a public parking lot or a public patio that they allow this public in general to have use of. Those types of things instead of those coming one by one, having something a little bit more structured and transparent and process oriented, so that those can be vetted through a competitive grant process, is something that one of the reasons I like this in theory. So open it up for discussion or questions. I know David has some comments about on some of this, but I want to see if council has any. I actually have a few of my own of adjustments in it to even make it a little bit stronger for Fountain Inn, but I'll open it up to anyone else at this time.
Mayor, would we, let's follow the Anderson model and have available $25,000 per quarter with a total of over a year, obviously of 100,000. So we have, let's say, 10 people apply for that grant. How do we choose who gets it? And secondly, are we going to limit them to a dollar amount? We're going to limit everybody, every single individual, to a dollar amount.
Those are good questions. So the ordinance, and the last thing, structurally, I believe this dovetails really nice with the larger economic development incentive. However, we don't feel, if council don't feel any pressure that this has to be a part of it at second reading of the larger incentive in November. I just think it dovetails really well with that. But to your point, Mr. Mahoney, the ordinance does lay out a panel who would review that. It does not include, it actually is not council. That's one of my notes is currently it's mostly staff plus the Chamber of Commerce. Personally, I'd like to see a member of the Planning Commission, a member of the Board of Zoning Appeals, and then somebody from staff level and also our chamber be the panel or some variation of that, so it's not mostly staff. That's one area of mine. And then yes, there are caps set for each of those areas that we would put in the ordinance, as well as, I believe, and these are getting to two of my points already, putting in one of the additions to the ordinance, I think that might want to be in there, is a cap on the total budget for the year as well. I don't want this to grow into something that every year we're just adding money to left and right just to do it. I want us to be pretty responsible for it. That it would be something that council would adopt, but could not exceed a certain amount. Additionally, one of those areas that's currently in there that I think might from looking at what the role of government would be in this, taking out the interior upgrades construction area. I don't think we need to necessarily get into, I know Anderson does it, and that's fine. That's what their council deemed appropriate. I don't know if we want to get into the business of judging interior design, but things like the facade of a building that adds or hopefully adds to the character of our community, things that are of public use, such as parking and other infrastructure projects, those seem to be much more appropriate of things that we want to be sure that, we want to encourage people to upgrade their buildings and put a new put a new coat of paint on their front. We actually had a facade improvement grant program in our past already. So those are some of the tweaks that I hope helped answer your questions, Mr. Mahoney.
Hey, one last question that you had talked about is, you're going to have planning commission, somebody on the planning commission on this board that you're talking about. What if that person on the planning commission happened to be a business owner that would like to apply for one of these grants? Is that going to be a conflict of interest?
Yeah, and that would probably be something they would sit out on. And I've talked to David about this, and anything that we think needs to be in this ordinance, to give us those guidelines and those guide rails, I'm totally for. I don't want to leave I don't want to leave loopholes in this.
Mayor, me
Yes,
and you talked, are we still talking about doing a 50-50 match with this money?
I believe, Sean, there is a match. It's a fee. Yeah, it's a 50% match minimum. So, I mean, the project could be a lot more than that, and they ask for the cap and they're putting in a lot more, but a minimum of a 50% match. So yes, the businesses do have, we're not paying for a whole project.
Okay, I'm good with that.
A couple of questions. One, what will be the time frame if a business receives a grant? They cannot apply for the grant for 2 years, 3. I mean, is there some kind of situation with that? And also, are we putting caps on different types of things? Because it's not like, oh, here's $25,000. You guys come in and one person gets the whole pot. We're going to be, I mean, theory, it could be a couple or a handful of people at one quarter splitting that 25,000, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So great points. Yes. Yes to all of those. There is a time frame. I believe it's 3 fiscal years that they would be ineligible. Is correct, Sean, or something? There's something about when they can't reapply for 3 years.
Yeah, that I don't believe was a City of Anderson one, but that was something that I thought was appropriate in that, you know, if a business did receive funds for that they'd have to wait a certain period of time before applying
and there
for additional
and there are
applying for additional funds. Sorry.
There are caps also for each individual area as well, Ms. Derryberry. Facade improvement. I mean, these numbers too are up for discussion. I think these are pretty much copied from Anderson. I think they're a little tweaked from Anderson, but facade improvement right now, maximum 5,000. Again, it's up to a 50% match too. So it's not paying for the whole project. Signage, there's a maximum of 1,000. Design assistance, which is more like the consultant work to actually get the designs done and, you know, approved by our city staff who has to make sure they meet our code. And then there's interior upfit and maintenance, which is the item I'd like to see. Probably we eliminate that so that we're not in that business. And then infrastructure, currently there's a maximum of 20,000, but I think we can lower that in the grant program to something lower, in my opinion. One of the things I talked with David about was not just the timing of when eligibility is renewed, but also timing of applications. There's a good reason I think Anderson does quarterly. It's so you don't front load your year and you don't, you just approve all these projects in one fell swoop. I'd like to see something that's maybe codified that's twice a year or something like that. And this way we're not, it's not just, someone's been waiting all summer for this grant application and then we're hit with like 45 or 60 applications for stuff. So, and they don't have to fund up to the maximum. And, there's like I said, a lot of these might be facade improvement grants, which would never reach that 5,000 cap. It could just be a new coat of paint. But anyway, those are some other thoughts of mine.
I have a follow-up question too.
Yeah.
So, what kind of requirements will we have with the application? Will they have to have a budget of what they are intending to do and then the amount that they're requesting? I mean,
yes. Yeah. Sean, I read through all of it. I may miss something, so let me know if I missed something. I think there is yes, they have to put together their whole budget. Also, it's important, I forgot to mention this and I apologize, it is reimbursable. It's reimbursed. So it's not something they're getting up front. It is once the expense is incurred, then only then is it eligible. So we're not giving it and saying, okay, well, I hope you finish the project. The project has to also start within 120 days of the award. So it's not something that can park for 4 years either. So is that right, Sean?
Sorry. Yes, a contractor's itemized bid would be required. And then project has to be complete within 120 days. Work completed prior to grant approval wouldn't be eligible. And then, approvals and permits are all the responsibility of the owner or applicant. Must be submitted, prior, or must have all of those kind of things in hand before any reimbursement was to occur. But I do think a lot of those details that these questions that we've been getting, I think are all great questions from council, but I think those are all things that still need to be ironed out.
Or tweaked from the current language too. I think this is just sort of the first whack at it. So, Mr. Holmes, did you have anything to add?
The only thing I had to add is that I've done a lot of looking at it, and I've talked to the folks at the Municipal Association. It's interesting because they actually sent me the Anderson ordinance to try to show what could be done. They sent me one from Newberry, which is very short and sweet, not much to it. What I did find out is that there isn't a lot of guidance, because Sean is correct. What most cities have done is just a facade improvement. So, and for some reason, the $5,000 is a normal amount. I'm not going to bore you with the details, but there are two basic things that you have to be concerned about. One of them is that there must be a public purpose. You can't just spend public dollars just to improve private property. There's got to be some demonstration that the public benefits. And so you say, well, how does a facade improvement grant benefit the public? Well, if you have a downtown like Fountain Inn does, and buildings are beginning to deteriorate, that tends to discourage others from coming in and making some investment. So by giving people some money to encourage them to improve their building can stir up others to come. That would increase your tax base, provide employment for more people. So as they say, the devil is in the details, so that these applications are going to have to show first and foremost that there is some public benefit connected to it. So for example, an existing business, and I'm just throwing this out here, that says, I want to do something to my building, and this and that and the other, but it's not going to increase the number of employees. It's not going to increase the amount of sales. So there's not more sales taxes and that kind of thing. Then chances are that project wouldn't be approved, because you can't show a public benefit. The second thing we have to do is, under the Constitution, there's what's called equal protection. And what it means is that everybody who applies for money has to be treated absolutely equally. And that's what's difficult, because the more discretion that you give committee members in deciding not only whether a grant is going to be given, but how much a grant is going to be given, the more opportunity you have to run afoul of the easiest way for me to put it is, I like this applicant, but I don't like the other one. So I'm going to give money to somebody I like, and I won't, and that's illegal, and you can't do that. But I think it's a program you can take a look at. I think there's areas that are trying to take a look at it. From what I was told from the folks at the Municipal Association, they are seeing that the courts seem to be a little bit more, I'll use the word liberal, in allowing the use of public dollars for improvement projects. Now, right now, you all are looking at a program primarily where you're going to budget an amount of money and use that amount of money to do these incentives. What I have seen a lot done is where there's going to be some public improvements, like a business wants to expand, and so we have them put in a sidewalk. Well, the city could certainly pay for that sidewalk, and typically what the city would do is to say, we will rebate to you some of your property tax money over time to pay you back for putting in the sidewalk, or a pocket park, or something like that. I am familiar with projects where there has been road improvements, sidewalk improvements, sewer improvements, and agreements have been entered to rebate a part of the real estate tax, because obviously sometimes that's going to increase the property taxes, rebate some of that over a period of time. So there are a number of things you can do, but we just have a lot of work to do, and council will just have to say, we want this program. Here's the goals we're attempting to accomplish. And then we'll have to develop some specific criteria for how you can apply for the money and then how that money's awarded.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. Any
So-
other questions or, yeah, go ahead.
So hearing Mr. Holmes is, what, do we think that we need to not merge this with the first ordinance and have it stand on its own because we need some more time to develop more specific guidelines?
I'm open to that 100%. What I might propose is, if anyone's got specific thoughts on tweaks, kind of giving them to Sean, and maybe we can work out what an updated draft would look like, and then we can look at it separate. I don't know. I'm saying I don't think this is the version we would attach. Is my point. So I think when we have the version that we want to attach, and if it still needs work, then yeah, we should separate the two. But in general, yeah, I think it's fine to park this after we do the other economic development incentive one, in my opinion. And I guess it may just depend on if we make some tweaks, send it to David, and if David thinks it needs some more work, then maybe we hold off.
I'm good with.
All right. Mr. Mahoney, any other questions?
No, I think that sounds good. I would like to have the panel or the committee go through and look at this, come back to council with all of these things that we talked about, you've talked about, and we would be better informed at that point.
Thank you, AJ,
Okay.
for bringing it up. Thank you, AJ, for bringing it up.
Yeah, those are good, very good questions. And Mr. Blackstone, any comments?
I'm good.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Thomason?
No, I'm good.
Okay. I don't hear any other sort of discussion, and staff, and if Naomi or Sean, or I know Sandra's sitting over there, but if Naomi or Sean have anything to add.
No.
I would just say the one thing is that we were not necessarily proposing $100,000 like the city.
Oh, yes.
We were looking at cutting that in half. City of Anderson is more than 2 to 3 times size of the city of Fountain Inn. So I think it would be appropriate if we were to model an ordinance after that we use an annual amount that was much more relative to our size of municipality.
Thanks, Sean. That's a great point that I had written down and didn't get to. But yeah, we'd cap it. In my opinion, too, we would cap it in the ordinance, would be my preference. And we can always, future councils can always amend it if they'd like. But cap it. I think 50 is an appropriate. I also know that that's the number also that we don't have to adjust this year's budget. There's an existing item that kind of, I think, was just waiting for something like this to be attached to this year. So we don't have to do anything to the budget either. All right. I don't hear any other comments or questions. So this time I'll just ask for a motion to adjourn. Our next council meeting is Thursday, November 12th at 6 p.m. So is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mahoney. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Blackstone. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Yes, have it. We are adjourned. Thank you all. Have a great evening.
Good night.
Thank you.